Thanks, Premier. So the numbers are bouncing around a little bit, but we're not going to see, 300s and 400s again in Victoria, not under my watch at least. It would be great to see numbers going down even further, but I still do expect that we're on a trajectory, a 7-day moving average that sees it continue to decrease. But we do have to be doing all of those essential things. They are simple, sometimes they sound really trite to be repeating, but essentially the transmission that's still occurring is sometimes because people have forgotten those really basic but very essential elements. Not washing your hands that one time, forgetting your mask, not wearing it properly, hugging someone who's outside your household. These are simple but also easy to forget. We've got ingrained habits that we're trying to turn around and reinforcing those messages, as was seen in those TV commercials yesterday, are just really important things to amplify that message to as many in the community as possible. And if it can reach just a few more people or make it a bit more habitual for us to do those very simple but really important things, then that's really essential messaging. But we have seen a decrease in our hospitalised cases, down by 25 to 585. The number in intensive care has decreased by 4 to 32, and there are still 21 ICU patients on ventilators. The number of active cases now 4,012, so that's decreased by another 281. I think the true figure of active cases is probably quite a bit less than that. There is a definition for hospitalised patients that requires them to be tested and negative to be cleared as an active case, but that definition is going through a national revision because really not everyone needs to be tested. Even as a hospitalised patient, they will be over their illness in the same way that we count recovered community cases without needing to test them to be cleared. So I think the true active case figure might be more in the 3,500 range, but we'll have that when the national definition for recovered cases is clarified. That's it from me.
Brett has reminded me,
while your next road trip might be on hold for now, it's never been.
The Australian Medical Association President Omar Horshid said this morning that government shouldn't compel all Australians to get a vaccine because of the fast-tracked process. Just wanted to get your response on that.
Well, we don't have a vaccine, so I don't think we should be really providing a commentary on any vaccine that's not yet in existence and available for use in Australia. It'll obviously go to the Australian Technical Advisory Group on Immunisation, ATAGI. They'll provide their advice on target groups and the when and the how of vaccination in Australia. But it's up to HPPC to give advice on the broader public health response using a vaccine. And when we have a vaccine, I'll reflect on it with all of my counterparts across Australia and be providing my advice at that time. I certainly don't think we should be jumping in with commentary on a vaccine that's not yet here.
So you don't currently share his views that governments shouldn't compel Australians to get the vaccine because of the fast-tracked process or the fast-tracking of the trial?
No, as I say, we don't have a vaccine to talk about. So I think at the point that we have a vaccine, that's a very valid question. We'll come to it.
Can you bring us up to speed about the cluster that's emerged, or the cases at the Masked Singer? Do you know what happened there?
Well, there are a number of staff in that show who tested positive. They presented and the department's been notified and the show's shut down immediately. But it does speak to the fact that workplaces in particular, because people are not necessarily wearing masks if their work doesn't allow them to have them, and might be in closer proximity because of the nature of the work. That's one of the issues in meatworks. It can be an issue in other industries, and so with a very infectious virus, that's what happens. You get a cluster of cases. There are a number of people who will be in isolation now awaiting test results, and there'll be a number of close contacts who will need to do that 14 days of quarantine as well.
Would this prompt a review of their exemption?
Oh, I think we're always looking at industries in the broadest sense, but I don't think any particular outbreak that occurs in an industry necessarily means that anything's gone wrong. It does relate to the fact that anyone who comes in with a virus can spread it to others in a workplace.
I guess many Victorians would just be surprised that it was even allowed in the first place, given so many people, as Rachel said before, lost their jobs.
Oh yeah, but the determination's been made around broad sectors that are considered essential, and television is one of those. How the determination's been made for every single show, I'm not sure, but I'm not even sure it's possible to say, this is a program that can go ahead and this one can't go ahead. It will be about the broader, workplace issues with the program.
Do you have the ref number at the moment? An updated ref?
No, I don't have an updated ref number. We'll have one early next week.
Just on the Masked Singer, will that studio need to be shut down for 14 days? What will be the process?
There'll be operational considerations that they'll need to come to. Obviously, it's gone through a clean. There'll be a review of a whole bunch of processes. But for the close contacts who need to quarantine for 14 days, it'll really be around how essential some of those staff are to the program.
In terms of New Zealand, my understanding is that the Americold cluster has grown slightly. Has there been any change? Last time you ruled it out, you said the freight hadn't moved. Has there been any change?
No.
No. Great.
In relation to yesterday's ad, I think you tweeted back saying, "Nice work, Shaz," and then Shaz fainted and was beside herself. Tell us about what you think about the ad.
Oh, look, I think all of these ads, to the extent that they'll reach a new audience, and not everyone will respond to every message, and not everyone will be reached by those messages, but to the extent that they find new audiences or engage people in a different way, and might just have them reminded of some of those essential, but as I say, sometimes very boring messages, to re-engage with those messages in a way that might make them think about it as they're leaving the house, as they're going to work, or as they're interacting with others, then I think it's a great thing.
What gives you confidence that we won't see 300 or 400 cases a day on your watch at the moment?
Look, we're applying a strategy that is driving cases down. It'll continue to drive cases down, and we are not taking our eye off that at any moment. So in the case and contact tracing response, in the outbreak management, in the individual case management, supporting people in their isolation and in their quarantine, all of that work is full steam ahead. And the stage 4 restrictions, as painful as they are just the thing that stops opportunities for transmission. And so we will see numbers down by virtue of that.
So people can have confidence we're not going to see a third wave with those upticking numbers.
Oh, as the Premier said, it's not in any one individual's hands. It's not in government's hands alone. It is our collective task to avoid that, and part of it is staying the course through this point in time. There's no question that people want a more normal life now, and that there are so many frustrating and difficult and painful aspects of stage 4 restrictions, but staying the course is the critical thing to do. Go through this period of substantial pain to be on the other side that allows us to have the freedoms that we all crave, really.
400 deaths now is the total that we've got, 17 cases. You touched on this yesterday, but do you have an estimate of when we can really see those numbers those daily deaths start to come down? Is it weeks that we're talking about, or is it days? I think we'll see a stabilisation in the number of deaths that are occurring, and it may well have plateaued now. I certainly hope it has, because each and every one is tragic. People are losing their parents, they're losing their grandparents, they're losing their great-grandparents. Everyone is affected by every death that's occurring. But I do think it's a long haul. There are many, many people, especially in residential and aged care, who are current cases, who are active cases, and it's a very, very serious illness for those individuals. And so I don't think we'll suddenly see deaths cease. We have to continue to drive numbers down for that very reason, because every single one is an awful occurrence.
Do you have any idea how many of those are from aged care settings?
Overwhelmingly from aged care settings. You know, as you hear the numbers every day, the majority are from aged care settings. You know, it's something like 280 out of the 400 off the top of my head. But I don't have the exact numbers in front of me.
And in relation to all those thousands of ventilators that we did order in anticipation for, you know, how bad it could get, do they just sit in storage now, or do we give them to other countries who are dealing with the virus?
Oh, look, it's for the Department of Health and the Minister, Minister Makakos, to make determinations around that. I think as we're still in a global phase where anything is possible, where countries have thought that they've not had a requirement and then had a very substantial requirement, who thought they're through a wave and then that they aren't. There's a long haul to go with this pandemic, and I think there will be no regrets about having an excess ventilator capacity as a contingency measure.
We're halfway through stage 4 today. Our numbers, are they better or worse than you had anticipated before we entered stage 4?
Oh, I think we're about on track. I think this is where it was being modelled to be. You know, I'd love it to be even better every day, but you know, I think it's a tough phase. Every phase is a tough phase, but this is a tough phase because there are those complex outbreak settings that are really difficult to turn the transmission around. Then you then get the household members of those workers who sometimes get exposed before those workers have become symptomatic, who then become cases, and so it's all tricky. But it is heading in the right direction.
And based on that modelling, where do you expect us to be by September 13?
So no really concrete fixed expectations. I certainly hope that we're in double figures. If we're in single figures, I think that would be ambitious, but it'd be great if we're there as well.
Tony Blakely said yesterday he thought it was about 50 to 60 by the end of stage 4. Well, September 13 is...
We can place bets. Look, everyone will have their view. In a sense, we don't know what the challenges of the tail are. One thing I do know is that as numbers get lower, you know, we'll have an opportunity to understand those chains of transmission even more fully. We'll be able to do upstream testing for every case to see whether they might have acquired it from, and therefore track more broadly where those chains of transmission might be. Obviously, we're checking on every case on a daily basis, and all those close contacts are being followed up. But if there's an opportunity to do daily check-ins for everyone in isolation and for close contacts, then that might even strengthen all of those elements as well. And so the tail, you know, has lots of dependencies in terms of how we manage the downslope of this curve.
And if those numbers still are in double digits at September 13, would we be expecting to have a few weeks in stage 3 still?
Look, I think we make those decisions close to the time. Again, people want all of that clarity. Me as well. I would love to have that clarity, but we can't second guess what the transmission will be, what the circumstances that we need to look at until we're closer to the date.
And how much closer, as in a few days out of September 13 or a week or two?
Oh, as long as we could possibly give in terms of telegraphing some of the changes that we know need to be made. But the analysis will be ongoing right through, and we'll hopefully have a clearer picture, you know, at least a week out. But, you know, you don't know until you're getting close to it as to what the complexities are.
Just an update on some questions in the inquiry last week. There was reports that a person